You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And I'm sorry if I sound like a frog who is trying to sound sexy, but I'm now suffering from my second cold of the year, and it's still only mid-January. I'm convinced that this is all physical manifestation of the election and the inauguration and all that sort of terrible stuff. My doctor concurs and apparently has been seeing a lot of people who have come down with flus and misery and malaise and despair. Well, anyway, I can't say my M's or my B's, so forgive me, and my voice will come and go during this program. However, we have two very interesting guests, one from the world of physics and one from the world of Nigerian women. But before we go to any of that, we need to go inside the headlines. Hachoo! Well, we have survived the so-called inauguration and huge, impressive demonstrations across the country. Now the real work begins. We've got quite a bit of news to get through today, so on some items I'm going to do just short blurbs because they speak for themselves. Here's a perfect example. NASA just announced that 2016 was the warmest year ever on record, and also the warmest year on record for the third year in a row. Now here's a big surprise. Not. New research by Gabriel Zachman, an economics professor at the University of California, Berkeley, shows that after making great strides in the 1980s and 90s, the number of women breaking into the top 1% of earners has stalled. Get this. Of the nearly 2,500 billionaires in the world, that many, only 294, or 12%, are women. I'm surprised there's that many. Also, the number of women worth $30 million or more declined in 2015, even as the equivalent male population grew. There's a new name for this. It's called the diamond ceiling. Women's wealth gap would apparently be even worse without inherited fortunes. Of those 294 female billionaires, only 49 are self-made. The usual banalities are offered as analysis, that there's an unconscious bias in the system because surely men would like to see more women at the top, and women have to envision themselves at the top and then just go out and become that person. Oh, for God's sake. It's the same reason that a woman on the factory floor stands less of a chance being the foreperson than does a guy laboring next to her. Plain, overt sexism. As for wealthy women, I do know some who live principled lives dedicated, along with their fortunes, to women's equality and to the women's movement, philanthropy as activism, and that's also made them more fulfilled and happy in their own lives. In China this month, women's rage exploded all over social media after the government, having abandoned its 3-decades-old one-child policy to control overpopulation, suddenly announced that all the previously mandated IUDs inserted into new mothers could now be removed at government expense. No apology, nothing. One woman said, "We shouldn't have had this in the first place, and now the government wants to use it as a form of state benefit for people." Another woman, who had never been advised of potential complications and the need for regular checkups after the insertion of an IUD, had to have a hysterectomy when surgery to remove the IUD was bungled. Another said it was like someone injuring you and then pretending to mend the wound. The government's action, of course, has nothing to do with women's well-being. It's driven by concern over the economic impact of the nation's plummeting birth rate, now one of the lowest in the world. We hear so much these days about the jobless rate among American men, especially white men whose sense of entitlement was outraged by being jobless, so much so that they became the highest voter constituency for Trump. Well, guys, it's going to get worse. The two occupations predicted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics to decline most quickly from 2014 to 2024 are locomotive firers, shrinking 70%, and vehicle electronics installers and repairers, down 50%. These are 96% and 98% male jobs. Of the fastest growing jobs, many are various types of health aides, which are about 90% female. Now, when men do take these so-called pink-collar jobs, they have more job security and wage growth than blue-collar work. But they're also paid less, and they feel stigmatized. A welder in Missouri, furious at being replaced by robots, nevertheless won't consider a caregiving job. He was quoted in the New York Times fuming, "I ain't going to be a nurse. I don't have tolerance for people. That needs a woman's touch." Now, keep in mind that this guy used to earn $18 an hour making railroad traction motors, while health aides earn a median wage of $10.50 an hour. Women's jobs have always had lower pay and lower status. Yet when men, especially white, enter female-dominated fields, they're paid more and promoted faster than women. That is known as the glass escalator. But the cultural lag, where our views of masculinity haven't caught up to the changing job market, runs smack into the resistance of working-class men, who, although terrified and outraged about not having a job, refuse to stoop to being health workers. One creative approach being tried is based on a study analyzing job listing language. Words like sympathetic, care, empathy, and families apparently repel males from applying for the job. The social stigma is so strong that healthcare employers have tried to use masculine language to appeal to men, talking about the adrenaline rush of being an operating room nurse, for example. The solution, of course, would be to use gender-neutral language. Duh. Some of the biggest names in the Republican national security firmament, veterans of the first and second Bush administrations like Tom Ridge and Michael Chertoff and Carla Hills and John Negroponte, apparently are being blacklisted by Trump. Their sin was having signed one or both of two public Never Trump letters during the campaign. Now, worried about some of the national security people he's surrounding himself with, they stand ready to serve again, simply out of fear for where the country might be going. But their calls are not being returned, and one said that the Trump people have told him there was an enemies list. Speaking of blacklists, don't forget that the Trump transition team requested names and job descriptions of all Environmental Protection Agency personnel who had worked on climate change, and also demanded the same information on those who work at the Women's Rights Desk at the State Department. Have the purges begun? One last quickie, good news to gladden your heart. Support for the death penalty in this country is the lowest in 45 years, dipping below 50% for the first time since 1971. Men are more likely than women to support the death penalty. Whites are more likely than Hispanics or African Americans to support it, and fewer Americans between age 18 and 29 support the death penalty than any other age group, according to both Gallup and the Pew Research Center. Executions also hit a 25-year low. The practice is rare now and concentrated in a narrow slice of the country: Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Missouri, and Florida. As the public changes, the Supreme Court will eventually reflect that, and Justice Breyer has already publicly mused that the death penalty violates the Eighth Amendment, in effect inviting a test case. We change. We do change. But it sometimes feels agonizingly slow. It's time for a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, but I'll return directly, and if you've ever wondered, well, for example, why ketchup moves so slowly, and then suddenly, when it starts to really move, it moves so rapidly, my next guest has written a book that will tell you that and all sorts of other answers, and it's so fun. It's coming right up.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My first guest is Dr. Helen Czerski. Czerski. She is a physicist, an oceanographer, and a broadcaster for BBC Focus magazine with a program called Everyday Science. She currently is at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at University College London, but she got her PhD in experimental explosive physics at Cambridge. That gets your attention. And that in turn led her to the world of very fast, small-scale phenomena, the study of ocean bubble formation. She also is an enthusiastic supporter of Science Girl, which celebrates real women doing great science. And she has just come out with a really interesting book called Storm in a Teacup, The Physics of Everyday Life. Here is Dr. Helen Czerski. Dr. Helen Czerski. Welcome, Helen. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
The book is called Storm in a Teacup, The Physics of Everyday Life. Regular listeners to this program know that I'm an amateur lover of science, particularly in these days when science is so beleaguered. Anything that is good, public, accessible science makes my heart pulse with delight, and this book is one of them. Talk about how the book came to be written, first of all.
Well, I'm a physicist. I trained as a physicist, but really the reason that I enjoyed physics was that I liked playing with toys. I liked poking the real world and seeing what it does, and I wanted to understand that. And so I've always been I'm all about the real world. I studied, the weirdness of quantum mechanics and the grandeur of the cosmology and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But what really got me interested is just what's going on around us and why it happens. And so the physics that I do for my job, I'm an academic at University College London, is that I study the physics of the surface of the ocean. But as I've gone on in life, I've noticed that I play with all the toys and most people don't. And so I wrote the book because I wanted to share all of this stuff, because it's interesting to know about it, but it also lets you work things out, which is tremendously powerful. Nobody's talking about this. No one's talking about the physics in the middle, and so I'm going to do it. So, yeah. So that was where it came from.
Well, I think that what is so special about this book is that it two things at least. It links up everyday science right on up straight to the cosmos in a seamless way, and which in fact reflects reality, and shows how the universe works by examining why milk in a teacup in a cup of tea gets all billowy. But the other is that it lends, oh my God, it lends such a sense of wonder and delight to everyday life. It's how do coffee stains really work? And why does your toaster glow red? And what's the difference between red coils or white heat? And it's just popcorn. Why does popcorn pop?
Well, the toys, isn't it? There's so much stuff that no one normally looks at, and that's all the stuff that it's just kids ask questions about it, and adults forget to ask the questions.
Exactly.
Physics is fundamentally extremely democratic in a way that, the rules of the universe are like this and everyone can play with them.
Right.
You don't need a sort of lab or a special environment. You can, push toast off a table and you see something really important about how the world works. And so it's right here.
You're not writing in some abstruse physics language, which I'm sure you're quite able to do, but you're writing for the rest of us, and very clearly. I mean, when you talk about why things spin and how they spin, and why ducks don't get frozen feet when they walk over ice, that is funny and yet teaches. It's just so damn enjoyable to read. I think what you're managing to do is to convey your delight in science to the reader, and I find that's not only so delightful but so valuable in an anti-science, downwardly mobile Western culture that seems to revere ignorance.
You're very complimentary, thank you. But I think it is important, because the thing about this is that when it comes to trusting science, and people who feel themselves to be anti-science, for example, they can push the toast off the table too. Yeah. The essence of this is that we're sort of familiar with this stuff from the everyday world, and everyone can try it out. And then once you trust that the world is systematic like this. The way toast falls and the way a cyclist goes around a banked racing track. It's the same stuff. And then you start to trust that maybe other things that come from the same sort of science are also true. And I think that one thing that's very important at the moment is bringing this right back to grassroots. Instead of saying, science is this amazing thing which is far away and awesome and you all have to just trust what it says. It's actually, we can play with this. Everyone has access to this. And we've done so well at making science seem amazing and far away that I think we're beginning to take it away from people. I mean, smartphones and things absolutely do that. No one has any idea what they're actually doing.
Yeah, right.
But they are based on the same physical laws that work when you stir your tea. And this really is, and they're tools, and they not only let you do things, but they let you ask the right questions. And that's part of the thing that's very important in the context you're talking about. If you want people to be able to use science to work out how we should run our society, it's not about knowing the answers, it's about knowing the right questions.
Right.
So you need to know the framework.
Right. And it makes it relevant to their lives.
The best thing about physics, in a way, for me, which is a word people are sort of afraid of because of all this other stuff, but they really shouldn't be. The best thing about it is that you take one thing, like the same little bit of physics explains popcorn and the internal combustion engine and cake and katabatic winds off Antarctica, and it's just one little thing, and you just say, you don't have to learn about all that stuff. You just go, here's the one little principle, and then all of these things are suddenly open to you. Right. And that is an amazingly empowering thing. And I think you can, because you see it in the everyday, you might as well talk about ducks, right? There's this sort of this attitude of some scientists that we must make it sound pompous and enormous things because that'll make us sound important. And I'm like, no, everyone has seen that weird thing where you spill coffee and it's a sort of filled in shape. And then when you come back later, the coffee has all gone to the outside, like a sort of line around a crime scene. Right. And it always happens. Everyone's seen it. Right. And you might as well look at that and, play with it a bit. I've drawn teddy bears with it. It's not all sensible.
Well, and also know why. And that is empowering. I mean, there's a chapter, I can't remember which, I'm flipping there. Chapter 9, I got it. A sense of perspective where you link up, you say, each of us relies on 3 life support systems: the human body, planet Earth, and our civilization. And the parallels between the systems are powerful because they all exist in the same physical framework. And then you take us from the one to the other. And I think if we could get people to understand that patterns are fascinating and that they repeat themselves and that there are some basic laws of physics, the naughty word, the scary word, you defrighten it for them. And I think that would be, because then they'd have a stake. Their knowledge would give them a stake in it, and they wouldn't feel that it's all a hoax, which would be very good for the planet, don't you think?
Yeah, also, and it's also extremely rewarding. I mean, one of the nice things about this is it's not just about, learning things because it's good to know things. There is this thing, so there's an example in the book about spinning eggs with their shells on to find out which ones are raw and which ones are boiled. Right. And I showed a group of, it was quite a serious business event and all these very serious people in their suits, trying to impress their boss. And so I did this thing with the eggs, and then I ran out of time, so I just said, you have a think about why it is, and let me, come up to me afterwards and ask. And I had these middle-aged men in suits coming up to me and tugging on my sleeve and going, is it this, is it this, is it this? And when I said yes, yes! And they were so, like, that sense of reward where you're like, oh, I can work this out for myself. I've got this little bit of knowledge, and suddenly I made the connection. Yes. That's very powerful. And you don't have to do it for someone. It's not someone being helpless and has to rely on, phoning tech support. And it's like, oh, I can work this out.
And it's fun. It's really fun. It's like, ha-ha! There's a delight in it, not only in the what you discover in the subject matter, but in the fact that you feel you've discovered it. You're onto an eternal truth. Tell the wonderful story of Agnes Pockels, if I'm pronouncing her name correct.
Oh, correct. So Agnes, when you look back through the history of women in science, they're often sort of pushed to the side. And Agnes Pockels was a German housewife, and her brother studied physics, but she wasn't allowed to go to university or study physics, so she was stuck in her kitchen. So she did what resourceful, interested women do, is she made the most of what she had. And So she started experimenting with bubbles, and this was in the 1800s. And people thought bubbles were amazing because they were always bright white. In a world before laundry powder, these bubbles were always bright white, and they were fascinated by them. So she experimented on bubbles in her kitchen, and she actually did some very clever things to understand surface tension, which is where the surface of water kind of acts a little bit like a sheet of elastic, and it pulls things. And she did some extremely clever experiments with buttons in her sink, and she made very sensible measurements. But she couldn't publish this herself, but she wrote to one of the most famous physicists of the day, Lord Rayleigh, and he put her paper into one of the journals, into Nature, and he wrote at the beginning this wonderful line, which is something like, "I've recently had correspondence with a German housewife who's made some significant contributions to this field." And the thing is that all you have to do is be able to think. You don't need that. All the Victorian physicists were thinking about this, but she got in there. She made a contribution because she looked at the world around her, and the physics that they hadn't measured this thing that she had measured. And so this German housewife, which is a slightly derogatory phrase, I think, because as we know, as any human really knows if they think about it, housework is, you have to think and you have to be resourceful and you need a brain to do that well. But this German housewife, was able to use what she had and come up with a brand new bit of science.
Yeah.
And actually make a contribution. But it is important to note, actually, that part of the reason she is recognised is that one of the blokes who did have power basically gave her a helping hand up.
Yeah.
He, and that's one of the things that we need, is all he said was, she has done good work, and this good work should be recognised.
But he was listened to.
So she was recognised.
Yeah, because...
and he was listened
Exactly.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit, Helen, about women in science, because I know that you've been an enthusiastic supporter of Science Girl, that's GRRL, Science Girl, which celebrates real women doing great science. And there still obviously is discrimination. I mean, women are more vocal now about it. And every time I can find a woman physicist who's written a book, I get her on the program, particularly if, like you, she is trying to democratize the approaches to it. But how are we doing? Are we making any progress?
I think progress is being made, and as always, it's not a problem with a simple answer. We understand that we don't have enough scientists and engineers in our society, and if we cut out half the population, we are obviously losing a huge amount of talent, not just in people power, but also in perspective.
Yes.
Because people from different places in society have a different perspective, and we live in a gendered society, much though we might not want to. So that perspective is still the perspective of half the population. But so I think we are doing better. The problem is the subtleties. We all grow up in this. We don't realize how all these little things that happen to you, little remarks that people make. We're social animals. We all want to do what society expects of us, whether we know it or not. We subconsciously take on those behaviors, and so I think it is starting to change. But it's still partly it's frustrating because it's sort of a generational thing. Some attitudes are literally going to die out with the older generation. But I think we're making it clear that you can be a physicist, and that doesn't mean you're male or female, but it's still a long way to go. And still, I still get described as a female physicist, and it frustrates me because I'm like, no, I'm a physicist.
Yes.
That is my job.
Maybe, Helen, we should begin describing the boys as male physicists.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a wonderful... That's the way to check. That's how you know that it's sexism, right? Is you imagine the same situation the other way around, and you say, does this sound weird? But it is starting to change, and it is starting to, and the thing is, it's modernization. It's not taking stuff away from the men. It's just a more modern way of running society for all kinds of reasons. It's not taking stuff away so we can do the boring thing and be equal. It's about making it better for people.
Precisely.
And there are lots of types of diversity, and these are people. Let's make it good for people, and but, it'd be good for all people.
That's true of every field. Intelligence and exploration are not limited resources. But it's also true that the class that has power always feels that to admit anyone else into the canon, into Olympus, is taking something away from them when it isn't. In fact, it's just widening all the boundaries. The book is called Storm in a Teacup: The Physics of Everyday Life, and it's really fun and educative, but fun, and beautifully written, but fun. And it's just out. The author is Dr. Helen Czerski, Czerski, with whom we've been talking. Congratulations, Helen, on Storm in a Teacup.
Thank you.
It's an absolutely lovely book, and thank you for writing it and for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. We've got 3 items today. The first, well, in case you thought that most of the hoaxes, the pro-Trump lies, the maligning of Hillary Clinton online, in case you thought that most of that seemed to be the work of young apolitical opportunists in some Eastern European country cashing in on a conservative appetite for viral idiocy, it's interesting to realize that there were some more ideologically elderly, classic right-wingers involved. The Patriot News Agency website started in July, and that was soon after it became clear that Trump would win the Republican nomination. And if you look at it, tucked away in a corner of the site, next to links for Twitter and YouTube, is a link to another social media platform that most of us have never heard of, VKontakte, the Russian equivalent of Facebook. Ta-da! The guy behind it is James Dowson, D-O-W-S-O-N. Patriot News is one of a constellation of websites run out of the United Kingdom that are linked with him. He's a far-right political activist who advocated Brexit, and he's a fan of Putin, and he's a fan of Christian nationalist anti-immigrant movements in Europe. He's spoken widely in Russia. He's obviously strongly pro-Trump, and he praises Putin as a strong defender of traditional values because he feels that under Obama, the United States itself has become a country of feminized men. Don't you love that? And, of course, where does he come out of? He comes out of the anti-abortion movement. It all comes down to reproductive rights. He himself has 9 kids. Actually, his wife has 9 kids. Anyway. 9 children. 9. And he's an anti-abortion campaign veteran. So let's keep an eye out for anything that seems attached to Dowson, D-O-W-S-O-N, James Dowson, because I don't think he's done with us yet. And something that we can do something about, local, home, right in our own backyards in the United States. A Connecticut politician last month in December declaring that Americans now live in a new world where people no longer have to be politically correct. He said, according to the warrant for his arrest after allegedly pinching an employee in the genitals, he said, through his lawyer, that was a playful gesture in front of witnesses, too trivial to be considered anything of significance. To call it a sexual assault is not based in reality. No, it's based in surrealism. That was his attorney, Phil Russell, talking to the Greenwich Time newspaper. In mid-December, a 57-year-old female town employee spotted the local politician. He's a 71-year-old Republican member of the Representative Town Meeting, the local legislative body that governs Greenwich, Connecticut. She said to him, according to the warrant for his arrest, she said, "This is a new world politically, and you need to educate your fellow politicians." "I love this new world," he replied, allegedly. "I no longer have to be politically correct." She allegedly answered, "If you're proud of that, I can't help you." He then retorted, "You're nothing but a lazy, blood-sucking union employee." Nice consistency there. As described in the warrant, she terminated the conversation with an F you and walked away. And then he later entered her office and, she claims, touched her, to say the least, inappropriately. And it was then, according to the warrant, that he, quote, reached between her legs from behind and pinched her in the groin area, close quote. The woman, again according to the warrant, turned to him and said, "You're lucky I didn't deck you. I love this woman. But if you ever effing touch me again, I will," close quote. "It'll be your word against mine," he said, according to the warrant, "and nobody will believe you." But there was a security camera at the unnamed facility with recorded footage of the encounter. Now, whatever happens, because of course he's now apologized, expressing regret that it's got out of hand, whether he is formally charged, and I hope he is, with sexual assault, this is something each of us can do, which is simply to drop a letter or an email or make a phone call to the representative town meeting, the local legislative body governing Greenwich, Connecticut, and tell them Christopher von Keyserling, Keyserling, has to go. Get rid of him now. And last, in the Surrealism Corner, you may have heard this, but I found it amusing that because Trump couldn't get any major stars, or even minor stars, to appear at the inaugural, and he really wanted people like Springsteen, he got the B Street Band cover band. They performed at one of the galas, and it amazes me because it's such an ironic and stunning admission that the real thing doesn't exist in Trump world. He's not genuine. The gold leaf in his apartments isn't genuine. His sanity, his politics, none of that's genuine. And fake news came from him, and now we have a cover band performing at an inaugural ball. The real thing has apparently gone out of style. Not maybe with you and me, but then, hey, maybe we're the ones who are surreal. It's time for another short pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and when I return, I'll be speaking with a woman who can update us on the kidnapped, and some of them now resurfacing, girls from Chibok, Nigeria. You remember that case. And also who will tell us about a remarkable NGO that she heads in Nigeria. So don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And welcome back again. My next guest is Saudatu Mahdi, M-A-H-D-I. Saudatu is a major leader of women's rights in Nigeria, and she's going to update us about what's happened to the Chibok girls, the girls who were kidnapped by Boko Haram years ago, and some of them have recently been released, and we'll get an update on how that's going. But as well, she is the head of WRAPA, W-R-A-P-A, which is a remarkable NGO in Nigeria. In 2014, the MacArthur Foundation recognized WRAPA as one of 7 nonprofits in the entire world that received the prestigious MacArthur Award for Creative and Effective Institutions. Here is Saudatu Mahdi. Welcome to the program, Saudatu. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Robin, and my very big privilege to be on your program.
Well, right back at you. Privileged to have you. You are the Secretary General of WRAPA, W-R-A-P-A, which stands for Women's Rights Advancement and Protection Alternative, which is a really frontline organization in Abuja, Nigeria. Tell us, first of all, about WRAPA.
Thank you, Robin, once again. And WRAPA is a rights-based non-profit that was registered in 1998, and it was founded and launched in 1999 by the former First Lady of Nigeria, that is Honorable Justice Fati Lami Abubakar.
Mm-hmm.
She founded the organization against the backdrop of her experiences as a lawyer and then a judge. She had served on the bench and the bar and was concerned with the gap between the knowledge of rights, the capacity to access rights, and the capacity to seek redress when rights are violated. So she put together a team of 37 experts in Nigeria who advised her on putting up a non-profit. But major concern she had was even the gap of knowledge, not just for women, but also for men.
Yes.
At the time we started, Robin, men would say to us, well, we'll one day set up a trouser organization. You know, all the trivialization that came with the name. But for us, it was important because the name in itself, a rapper, you know, underscores the national outlook of the organization, which means every woman in Nigeria, be whatever. You know, we have quite a number of diversities in Nigeria.
Yes.
But with rapper, all the diversities are knocked into the single cloth we all use as women, and that is the rapper.
Ah, that's so important. That's crucial.
It's so crucial to us, and it has really done a wonderful, it has been a great entry point for us in responding to the issues of women, irrespective of the denominators.
Yes, and RAPA works on ending child marriage and domestic violence and sexual harassment and all violations of a woman's or girl's rights. Am I correct?
Yes, all of that. RAPA is actually contextualized around 3 or 4 major issues. One, the weaknesses in the recognition and enjoyment of human dignity for women. It's perceived not as a right, but something that someone needs to award to you depending on how good a girl or how good a wife or how good a sister you are. And the second concern is the impaired quality of life for women and girls arising from, you know, an ending cycle of violence, poverty, disruptions, and, you know, unequal access to opportunities in education and economic well-being. And thirdly, discriminatory practices which you find in some parts of the country denying inheritance for women, in some other parts of the country denying consent in a marriage, where we have a prevalence of forced and child marriages. You also find you know, discriminatory practices in boy-child selection at reproductive health level, where women go all out, one too many, just to have a boy, because otherwise she and her daughters cannot inherit the estate of her husband and their father.
Yes.
So based on these 3 critical issues, RAPA works in majorly 6 ways. One, we work to address the the harmful practices relating to disinheritance and dehumanization of, you know, women.
Right.
We work on civil rights, you know, rights to education, employment, tenancy, contract, and political representation. We also look into issues of matrimony and early and forced marriages, maintenance, domestic abuse, and lastly, we offer humanitarian material assistance, especially in the area of school fees and welfare assistance. We render legal aid service for women who need to pursue their rights within courts of law in the country. And we offer this legal support within all the 3 legal systems. Nigeria has a tripartite legal system, the common law, the Sharia law, and the customary law. So we offer support to women under all the 3 regimes of law. We also engage in constructive dialogue with institutions of faith and culture because they are the custodians of the moral conscience of society, and they have the legitimacy for promoting shifts. We also have a position of, with all modesty, leadership in building movements that demand for recognition and protection of women's human rights. To that end, we had for 14 years led the debate and the legislative advocacy for the enactment of the national legislation on violence against women. We developed instruments and mechanisms for the demand and enforcement of women's human and personal rights, especially in the context of culture and faith. And then our legal aid counseling support, which is our major flagship intervention, where we support girls seeking to enforce their right to education and career, right to consent in marriage, divorce, custody for women who are divorced, and then most importantly, health care. Other issues include support for victims of sexual and domestic violence. And we do that in 22 of the 36 states of Nigeria, with an average overall of 15 women per day.
Good
and,
grief.
I believe you know how wide Nigeria is.
Yes. It's a big country.
So, but the big catch, which we started about now getting to 5 years, is building women's self-esteem alongside economic empowerment. We were only doing economic empowerment because we believed that was a way to incentivize women to come together. In some of the terrains, men just wouldn't allow their women to come to centers like ours.
Of course.
In some instances, you find men would say, no, I don't want my wife there. They're going to upset the power balance in the house.
Do you ever sleep? I mean, this is an enormous program. So you haven't slept in 6 or 8 years, huh? I mean, this is just...
well, we are supported by 42 volunteers across the country, and then the membership of the organization.
I want to add, for the listeners' sake, we're going to give the website of RAPA, but I also want to add that RAPA is a partner of Donor Direct Action. DonorDirectAction.org is, I'm proud to say that I'm on the board of it, and one of the helping founders. And it is a U.S.-based NGO that previously, when you wanted to be able to give funding support to an NGO abroad, you couldn't do so with a tax-deductible donation. You could only do that for U.S.-based NGOs. So DonorDirectAction.org, we set that up so that you could give to a partner organization of DDA and still get a tax deduction. So if you go to DonorDirectAction.org, you will and look up RAPA, WRAPA, or you just leaf through the various groups and you will find RAPA. You can be supportive of the remarkable work that RAPA does and Saudatu does that way, and also get a tax deduction. But also give the website of RAPA itself, Saudatu.
Okay, it is www.rapanigeria.org.
You're also the co-founder of the Bring Back Our Girls movement in Nigeria, which calls for the rescue and the rehabilitation of the 276 girls who were kidnapped in 2014 from a secondary school in Chibok in northern Nigeria, and they were kidnapped by Boko Haram, an extremist and terrorist organization. And some of the girls managed to escape over the next few months, I think 57 or so. But the point, and just a further 21 girls were freed in October of this year. They've been sort of dribbling out, but there's a whole other set of problems for the girls who emerge. Some of them have a child from rape. Some of them are pregnant from rape. These were schoolgirls, 13, 14 years old, and they've been in captivity, and so, of course, they've been raped and abused and enslaved and have acute post-traumatic stress symptoms, and in some cases they were ostracized by their own villages. You work with the Bring Back Our Girls movement addressing all of that. So please tell us where we are. Update us on this situation.
Well, as you have rightly said, we got the 21 girls released as a result of the negotiations going on between the federal government of Nigeria and I think the insurgents. So I think the first thing to say is the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, as well as my organization, actually welcomed the development because we were actually becoming despondent after 2 years plus.
Yes.
That a single girl had been rescued or released or negotiated back. It was really building up a lot of pressure both on our movement, and it came as a big relief. But obviously we have not lost sense of what it means. What it means is, one, that truly the girls were abducted. If you recall, this was even an issue.
Yes.
There was an issue of determination whether it was truly this number of girls had been abducted or not.
I know. Yeah, it became a worldwide campaign. It still is.
Yes, it did. And so the first relief was that these girls are alive, and we wouldn't know. We would have lost them ordinarily, even if they had not been abducted. Some might have died of natural causes. But the relief was that a significant number may still be alive and in one place, only to be rescued or to be released based on negotiations. The second relief was that with careful and considerable negotiations, more could be secured, and that is what we are all, looking up to. That more negotiations are happening, and we are also very careful and mindful of the fact that we must not do anything either by way of our advocacy or by way of our pronouncements that could compromise the negotiations to the extent that we lose this window of opportunity.
Of course.
To get back.
Of course.
In terms of these 21 girls, they are under care of the federal government right now as I speak.
These are the girls that were released last October?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They are in a government medical facility under the supervision of the security and, the guidance of the security agencies as well as the supervision of the gender ministry. A lot of them have been treated. They have been given very rigorous health checks. Some have even had, I think, some treatments done. But most importantly, I understand from a higher authority that they are doing well.
Well, I mean, once the whole world hopes so. It's such a terrifying situation. I kept thinking, why doesn't this, when almost 300 girls are abducted, why isn't the Security Council sitting in an all-night session to figure out what to do about this? But of course, it's not considered that important a matter, because it's girls, and because it's in the global South, and it made some of us who were working on the campaign from this country or internationally, just heartbroken and furious. So for every girl that gets out and can be given care, it's a triumph. Thank you, Saudatu. Thank you so much for everything that you do with the Bring Back Our Girls movement and everything that you do with women's rights advancement and protection alternative, RAPA. And it's just good. It's awfully good to know that there's someone like you in the world walking the planet. So I honor you and am grateful to you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. Thank you.
I'm so grateful and honored to be on your program. And I hope it is the beginning of a relationship we will continue to amplify the voices of women around the world.
Absolutely. And it's time for another brief pause, the last one, here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will be back with those fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. It's only the beginning. The massive turnout in marches all across this country and sympathy demonstrations, women's marches, in cities across the world. Sisterhood is global. The first 100 days of the Trump regime will be matched by 100 days of activism. Solidarity in large numbers, expressed in public dissent, makes participants feel exhilarated. But that can be illusory, because then comes the real work of fighting back. And there's so much to do. I notice an undercurrent in what I've been thinking these past painful days. It has to do with the 52% of white women who voted for Trump. Now, I know that white women, especially non-college degree suburban and or working class women, usually vote Republican. So this is not the first time, just as this is not the first or last time, that black women, Latinas, Asian American, and other women of color consistently vote for progressives. Those were the women who accounted for Hillary carrying the women's vote. But damn, those white women consistently voting against their own self-interest make me crazy. I go around in loops. Where did we fail them? How can we reach them? Which is not made easier by requiring a leap of, well, not necessarily faith, but a leap of respect for who they are, even though by their own descriptions, who they are and what they do is against their own self-interest. Recently, the New York Times interviewed such pro-Trump women around the country, asking the big why. Well, of course, they cite a range of reasons for voting as they had: worries about the economy, anger about the price of health care, loyalty to guns and gun culture, that's identity politics, fear of foreigners and immigrants and terrorism, and opposition to abortion rights, sometimes religious. Some were angry at Obama, for whom they had even voted once or twice, because he hadn't, after all, solved racism. But many of them simply voted against Hillary. They bought into all the lies about her, though some flatly said they didn't care whether those were true or not. They just didn't trust her. They couldn't put their finger on it, but didn't trust her. Mind you, when they were asked about her record as Secretary of State or Senator or First Lady, they were highly approving. When asked about her policy stance, they were approving, except on abortion. But they just didn't trust her. They didn't trust Trump either, but they were, as one summed it up, willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. That's the kind of thing that has me banging my head against the wall at 4 a.m. But then, in one of those middle-of-the-night leaps of connectivity, I found myself thinking about another woman I've covered on this program, Irom Chanu Sharmila, a heroine to many in the corrupt, violence-ridden Indian state of Manipur. In November of 2000, Sharmila, a young protester, was part of a local popular resistance movement formed after 10 people were killed by the Indian armed forces, none of whom were prosecuted for the attack. Sharmila, then 28 years old, embarked on a hunger strike. It was to become the longest political fast in modern history, way outdoing Gandhi. She spent 16 years in a hospital ward, being force-fed through a nose tube under an Indian law criminalizing suicide. Legends grew about her. Songs were written exalting her. Amnesty International declared her a prisoner of conscience. Her pale face with a feeding tube attached to her nose was on T-shirts and posters and auto rickshaws. People called her the goddess of Manipur. Then, last July, Sharmila announced that she would end her fast and run for office to unseat the powerful and corrupt Chief Minister of Manipur, currently serving his third term. She also announced plans to marry a British citizen of Indian descent, a man who had written her and then visited her, and they'd fallen in love. In interviews, she noted that the tactics of self-starvation now proved ineffective due to tube feeding. But she declared that the adversary was the same, and that she hoped now to be more effective with this new strategy. She said she counted on the goodwill of all the people who'd supported her for 16 years, and on August 9th of last year, through a press conference, licked a dab of honey from her hand, smiled, and left the hospital. All hell broke loose. Angry crowds surrounded the ambulance bringing her home and forced it to return to the hospital. Delegations, mostly of women, arrived to beg her to change her mind. They said she was a saint. She said she wanted to make real change. They said she had no right to stop fasting. She said, "If I continued, I would have died. I changed my strategy, and you hate me for that?" She told an interviewer, quote, "I've been in isolation for 16 years. I was tired of being an icon. I was yearning to meet the people, but they drew me in whatever imagery they wanted of me, and they just kept me there and worshipped me. I don't know why they're so violent." The women gave various responses. They weren't happy with things changing. They didn't know anymore what was happening in Sharmila's mind. Some felt it was the fault of this non-local man who came and put a venomous spell on her. They said she had no right to contest elections because she was a woman, and besides, who would support her, meaning they wouldn't. They said that women can show moral and spiritual power, but real power in the real world belongs to men. Younger, educated people do see hope in her candidacy, but her male detractors hint that she should be killed. And her female detractors, who are in the majority, still say things like, "Her status was so high. She was the Iron Lady. So beautiful. How could she do this to us? She broke my heart. I just don't trust her now." One spat and said, "She was the goddess of Manipur. Now she's just like any other woman. Like me." And there it is. What underlies all the other issues, however valid. Millennia of patriarchal acculturation saturating us with the message that to be female is to externalize strength and power, to externalize the sacred. Because if strength and power, whether sacred or worldly, lie within you, then why aren't you using them? This can sometimes be less evident in a heterogeneous society such as ours, where women of color, excluded by racism from identifying with dominant notions of the female, that's in the United States would be white, could dare, for the most practical reasons and also the most archetypal, dare to fight back in myriad ways. But the white working-class women in Michigan and Pennsylvania, the ones who voted like their husbands, who agreed with but still didn't trust Hillary, who found Trump disgusting but were willing to give him a chance, they didn't make that leap. I suspect that in 6 months their buyer's remorse will be acute. But whether it is or not, I'm haunted by words that reject even the possibility of fighting for oneself. Words voicing not just self-contempt, but self-erasure. I just don't trust her. Now she's just like any woman. Like me. That's the voice you and I, somehow, have to reach. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my own website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.